The information featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Property Success is proudly supported by Destiny, empowering property investors to achieve property success for almost 20 years.
Hello and welcome to the show. You're watching Property Success and I'm Margaret Lomas. Now each week on the program I talk to experts on property related matters, tax, legal problems, where to invest and how you can make better investment decisions. We cover a whole range of topics. Today we're going to be hearing about investing in Western Australia from Momentum Wealth's Damian Collins. Whether to rent or buy your principal place of residence and our town spotlight Nunda in Brisbane's inner north. But first let's catch up on all the news with Kevin Turner from Property Uncut. Kevin, what's been happening in the world of property this week?
Thank you, Margaret. It's been revealed that investors now make up about a third of the market. In fact, they account for about 30% of all home loans. According to Mortgage Choice, investors are entering the market again thanks to low interest rates and rising property prices, with property values increasing by around 12% across the combined capital cities last year. There's also been an increase in mortgage holders, borrowing more than 80%, which means investors are having to pay for mortgage insurance. Also, increased residential property prices in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane are a result of a normal market movement and not a bubble. That's according to a survey by the Australian Property Institute. There's also a belief that significant falls in prices are unlikely, but it's no surprise first home buyers are finding it difficult to enter the market, with affordability and increased competition making it much tougher for them. That's all for this week. I'll see you next time. Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks, Kevin. It's always good to hear what's happening all around the country in property. It's time now to continue to look at what's most people's biggest investment, their principal place of residence or their home. Tax expert Ian Rodriguez considers this week whether buying your own home is in fact always the best way to go.
Thanks, Margaret. It is the Australian dream to one day buy your own house and pay off your mortgage. However, from an economic perspective, this may not always be the best choice. To give you an example, consider our single investor Rhonda, who is looking to move to Sydney and is faced with the decision to buy a $700,000 apartment or rent one. If she decides to buy the apartment, Rhonda will need to get a loan for the $700,000 and for the next 30 years, she'll be paying non-deductible interest. On top of the cost of the property, she will also be faced with about $50,000 in costs to buy the property, including stamp duty, legal fees, conveyancing. Then when Rhonda sells the property, she will again be faced with about $50,000 in selling costs. So when she comes to selling the property, she will need to sell it for at least $800,000 and make a $100,000 gain just to recover the purchasing and selling costs, not to mention the non-deductible interest charges paid over the time. Rhonda needs to think carefully about the costs and the length of time she intends to own this property before making a rent or buy decision. Buying for a short-term hold can often be an expensive process when you factor in the buying and selling costs. In this case, it might be more worthwhile to rent and to invest the funds in a better investment with a better potential return and to have deductible interest. Before rushing into an investment, always do your homework, do the figures and make sure you are getting the most out of your investment.
There's no one-size-fits-all in property, that's for sure. You need to make decisions based on your own personal circumstances. But do remember, if you do decide to rent and not buy, it's still important to get on the property ladder by buying an investment property. And now to our weekly guest expert interview. This week my guest is Damian Collins from Momentum Wealth. Now I wanted to talk to Damian about investing in WA and find out whether it's a bubble about to burst, or are there areas that still look promising in terms of cash flow and capital growth. Let's find out what Damian had to say. Damian, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Margaret.
Tell me, what should a person do before they decide to choose a property investment advisor?
Well, there's a few things I'd recommend they research. Firstly, has the person got property investment experience themselves? So have they bought property? Have they invested? Have they been successful? That's an important starting point. Secondly, I'd be looking at their qualifications, particularly around property investment advice. There's no university degrees for that, but there is courses such as QPIA through the PIPA, Property Investment Professionals of Australia. So are they qualified to give advice in that area? Also be looking at their reputation, talking to their clients, doing a Google search. It's amazing what you can find on Google these days about people out there in the market. And fourthly, I'd also be looking at how they get paid. Anyone who gets paid by the seller or someone else is not necessarily really representing you. So I'd be looking at how they get paid. If you're paying them a fee, then you're more likely to get independent advice.
That's very good advice. Now, you're a property investment advisor yourself.
Yes, I am.
What sorts of things do you consider when you're putting together your strategies for your clients?
Really taking a holistic approach. So we started with where the client is at the moment, so their income, assets, liabilities, expenses, looking at their objectives. So what do they want to achieve? Do they want to buy 1 or 2 properties, or do they want to buy 10 or 20 properties, how aggressive they are? Their risk tolerance as well. People say that they want to build portfolios, but when you sit down with it and they say, well, you've got to go this much debt, they start to change their mind. So really understanding what their tolerance for risk is. Looking at their current portfolio holdings, so if they're already very concentrated in one location, start looking at other locations around Australia, and particularly outside their own suburb, which a lot of people invest in. And from there, really coming down with a strategy that's going to meet their goals. So all taking into account all those factors, what is the next property and what long-term property should they be looking at to achieve their property investment goals?
It sounds like a lot of work on your behalf, and I guess one of the common mistakes that investors make is thinking that if they're going to invest in property, all they need to do is buy property and they'll be successful. What methods are you using to choose the best areas to invest in?
Yeah, it's a common fallacy, isn't it? People think they just have to get into the market, and that's what a lot of the marketing groups push. You just buy anything and it all goes up 8% per annum. But we know that in a boom, maybe everything goes up. But in the long term, in the real world, that doesn't work that way. So we start by analysing cities. We start looking at regions, and a couple of things that we look at are what's the population growth? We need demand. So demand comes firstly from population. More people moving into that location means more demand for property, renting or buying. Secondly, really important is strong industries. So what are the industries in that town that are going to drive future demand, job growth? So looking at industries that have got global competitive advantage. So what's the key drivers there? And obviously the wages, that needs to be important. So it's good to have a strong industry, but if the wages are very low, property prices aren't likely to grow. So for example, the Gold Coast, where you get lots of retail and tourism jobs that don't pay very well. And the other thing is supply. That's a really important factor people forget. How much long-term supply can come into that region, and how much does it cost? If there's a lot of supply can come onto the market, that could hold back the price growth in that area.
Now, once you've chosen a broad area that you're going to invest in, how can an investor drill down into the actual suburbs that they need to be able to buy in?
So once you get into the suburb area, we're really looking at things that are again driving demand and affecting supply in that suburb. So looking at things like infrastructure, proximity, so people want to be able to get around, proximity to jobs, proximity to public transport, proximity to roads, and of course the CBD and water are always an important consideration as well. So that's on the demand side. We're also looking at future infrastructure. So what are the things that are likely to change in that area to bring in more middle to higher income earners? Looking at that areas and socioeconomic changes that are coming in. But again, really important supply, and a lot of people forget about that supply component. So if you're buying in an area that's going to have lots of land releases, generally we don't touch it, because even though there's good demand, the supply will hold back prices. And same in inner city areas. If there's mountains of sky-rise apartments going up, well, even if there's good demand for that, but there can be lots of supply to meet that market, you often find prices don't go as well as somewhere where there's less supply.
Damian, my viewers know that I talk about capital growth as being the ultimate importance in your portfolio. You can't really build a big portfolio and get out of it without that growth. But in the short term, investors also need to have a good rental return, otherwise they can't even stay in the market. Are there any tips that you have so that people can maximise those rent returns?
Yeah, I agree. Look, I want all my properties to be positively geared, but not at the expense of good capital growth, because capital growth is what makes you money. So, look, a few things you can do. Certainly looking at, it depends on the area. Some properties may be suitable for furnishing. Now, a lot aren't, so you've got to be just very careful about that. But furnishing, I've got a couple of properties in that target the student market. I put furnishing in, spend a couple of $1,000s and get an extra $40, $50 a week rent, so that really does help. But again, it's only very limited markets for that. Simple things like refurbishment might be a bit tired and dated. You might find some painting and carpets might generate quite a good return on investment, sometimes 10 to 15%. If you're in a market of Sydney or Perth where granny flats are allowed, that's certainly, if you've got a big enough block, you can get potentially up to 15% yields on the granny flat and blended yields on a property of 6 to 8%. So all those sorts of things can help. But I really encourage people to not, as much as you want that positive cash flow, don't buy second-rate properties and risky mining towns where we've seen at the moment where prices have come back a long way. So focus on the good growth properties and find those extra ways you can get better rental income.
Sounds like some good advice. Damien, typically what are some of the areas that investors go wrong with all of this?
But as I mentioned earlier, first of all, thinking that all properties go up in value at the same rate. I've seen people go out and spend 3 or 4 hours shopping for a dishwasher. They'll go from one store to another, do all the comparisons, and then finally negotiate a price. And the same person I know who did that also went out the next day and spent 1 hour at a display village and spent $500,000 on a property. So it's really about understanding that properties go up in different rates. It's doing research. So if you're going to go out there and do it yourself, you've got to invest that time. You've got to do some wider reading, do the study on the market, what's happening with the future infrastructure changes, and really do a lot of homework. It's not just a simple thing to go out and do on your own. If you're going to certainly need a team, no one can really do everything on their own, so that way will be a mortgage broker or a finance broker, someone who understands investors, obviously a property manager in the town, making sure you've got someone who's proactive and not just a rent collector. If you're not buying yourself, using a buyer's agent to someone to help you buy the property who knows the market as well. So really about building a great team around you is an important thing, and I find a lot of investors don't do that. And also I think it's also not sticking to property for the long term. A lot of people get very excited about property, but the average person sells in 3 or 4 years. So really about sticking through. Yes, the first few years can sometimes be hard and you might get a bad tenant, but most of your money in property is made not in that first 3 years, it's the longer term. So stick with the program, keep your motivation up, and you'll find if you do that, you'll build a pretty good portfolio.
Thanks for being with us, Damien.
Thanks, Margaret.
Again, you should make all your investment decisions, including where to invest, based on your own personal circumstances and investment objectives. Thanks, Damien, for your insights. We have to take a short break. I'll be back soon with some more great advice and, of course, my regular town spotlight. I'll see you after these messages. Hello again and welcome back to the program. I'm glad you've stayed watching. We get a lot of viewer feedback about our Town Spotlight, saying that it is their favourite part of the show. This week's Spotlight is an inner Brisbane suburb known as Nunda. Nunda is situated just 10 kilometres north of Brisbane CBD. It was settled in 1838 and first called Zion. It later became known as German Station, and in 1888 its name changed again to Nunda, and this has stuck. It's not just the name of the suburb that's changed over the years. The place itself has morphed from pineapple-growing farmland to a working-class suburb when the railway came to town, and then to the gentrified inner-city suburb that we know today. Nunda is a rapidly changing and diverse community which manages to retain a family and community focus. Housing is a mix of renovated workers' cottages and high-rise apartment buildings, and Nunda has a young population with a median age of only 34. It's located on the edge of what is referred to as Queensland's Golden Employment Triangle. This comprises Brisbane CBD, the Airport Precinct and the Port of Brisbane. All this infrastructure has attracted investors who have bought into the area due to the high rental demand. 5-year growth figures are quoted at 4.5%. Nunda was once a traffic bottleneck, but the bypass tunnel opened in 2001, which has improved the lifestyle of residents and visitors. The Sandgate Road shopping and cafe strip has a village-like atmosphere. Its neighbouring suburbs are Kedron, Hendra, Northgate and Woville Heights. And the stats for Nunda are: the population is 10,386, 43.8% of the population own their own home, with 53.5% renting, 43.8% of all dwellings are houses, 56.1% are flats or apartments. The median house price is $615,000, the median unit price is $370,000. The median house rent is $420 a week and $373 a week for units. The vacancy rate is 1.6 and the unemployment is low at 4.9%. By 2029, the Port of Brisbane and the airport will have a potential workforce of 140,000 persons, equating to the second largest employment node in Brisbane. By 2031, the CBD will have a workforce of over 222,000, maintaining its position as the largest employment node in Brisbane. Nunda is likely to benefit from the opening of the Airport Link Tunnel and the Gateway Bridge duplication, providing improved vehicle access to the city and to the Gold Coast. Easier access to key employment nodes will help drive demand for dwellings, which will be reached in increased rental returns and capital growth. As the key demographic in Nunda is the large proportion of younger residents, it's likely that we'll continue to see sustained growth in Nunda and its surrounds for a few years to come. It's time now to hear from one of our Property Success viewers. Now this week I'm going to answer Mary's question, which relates to her retirement planning. Hi Margaret, my husband and I, both 50, are considering purchasing an investment property to provide us with income for our retirement. We have 2 dependent children, 19 and 16, and a combined annual income of around $200,000, a mortgage of $320,000, and our home is worth about $1 million. I'm concerned we will need to sell the family home and downsize in order to adequately fund our retirement. We'd prefer to leave an inheritance for our 2 children to enable them to get on the property ladder before real estate eventually becomes too pricey. We used 10 years of cashed-in super to purchase and develop our first property overseas at the ripe age of 38 and 35, giving us a significant profit over the 7 years we lived there. Ultimately, this enabled us to return to Australia and purchase our first home here in a good suburb. How can we improve the future? Mary, firstly, I think it's imperative that you think about planning for your own retirement before you think about planning for your children's inheritance. You're a lot older and closer to retirement than they are, and the best inheritance that you can give them is parents who are financially independent and who lead by example. Now, you're in an excellent position to begin investing. In fact, you have been for some time, so there's simply no time to waste. I've done some quick calculations based upon your equity of around $700,000 and your incomes of $200,000, and there's no reason why you could not in fact buy total property to the value of around $2 million. Now, don't rush out and do that. Just because you qualify doesn't mean that you should. You must start with a strategy, an assessment of your risk profile, a plan which matches your personal circumstances, and then some good quality education to enable you to become a skilled investor before you start. If you don't follow this sequence, you'll be setting yourself up for failure and for every dodgy property spruiker that you're bound to find lurking in every corner. Here's some things to be wary of. Mortgage brokers giving you property advice. They're licensed to give you loan advice only, and they largely have no qualifications or skills to assist you to invest well. Financial advisors giving you property advice. Financial advisors no longer make money from commissions, and some are turning to developer stock to sell to their clients, for which they can receive commissions and do receive quite large commissions. Glossy brochures advertising fabulous property in areas that you can't confirm as being a hotspot. anyone giving you property advice and selling you a property as well. It's impossible to be independent if there are commissions to be made. Now that I've provided all the warnings, get going. Read some good property books and look for an advisor who offers a pure advice model. Get educated too, but beware the spruiker seminar with the high price tag. To have a chance of getting your question answered on the show, all you need to do is send it on an email to me, Margaret Lomas, at questions@pswml.com.au. If your question's chosen, you'll receive one of my best-selling books. So don't forget to include your name and address on the email. Otherwise, we won't know where to send your prize. Let's now look at another legal matter with Michael Tees. This week, Michael considers what you can do if you're faced with harassment or worse still violence over the course of your property investing.
There was a time, not that long ago, when bullying was regarded as a schoolyard matter and generally not taken that seriously, except by the victim. Fortunately, those times have changed, and bullying and its close cousins, harassment, violence and discrimination, are major issues for the community and the corporate sector. They are also major issues for investment property owners, particularly where the property is an apartment and there is a strata corporation involved. The nature of a strata community to its lot owners will depend largely on the wording of statutory provisions in various places, and the obligations on an owner's corporation or body corporate to enforce its bylaws. For example, a body corporate in Queensland has a duty to act reasonably, but no such express duty presently exists in New South Wales, although it may be implied. Similarly, there is no express duty on a New South Wales owner's corporation to enforce its own bylaws, although such express laws exist elsewhere. Special obligations rest with owners, corporations and bodies corporate in relation to harassment, violence and discrimination against people living in apartments or working on the common property. These duties arise under work, health and safety legislation, various discrimination laws and the applicable criminal law. Under the New South Wales Crimes Act and similar legislation elsewhere, any action which causes another person physical harm or to fear that they are going to be harmed, is considered an assault. Actual striking or hitting someone is called battery. If allegations of assault or battery are made to an owner's corporation or body corporate, the matter should be referred to the police immediately. If a worker has been attacked or threatened, they can apply for an apprehended violence order that prohibits the person named on the order from coming near them in any way. A person who breaks an AVO can be arrested immediately. A strata community may need to assist employees in obtaining an AVO if one of their members is causing the actual or threatened harm. This may be appropriate in addition to any enforcement action under the bylaws, although an AVO will be far more immediate and effective than bylaw enforcement. Owners' corporations and bodies corporate also need to be aware of threats of harassment or unfair treatment because of a person's sex, including pregnancy, race, age, marital status, sexuality, or because of a disability. As between owners, these matters may not concern the owner's corporation or body corporate, but if such conduct is playing out on common property or involving employees or contractors of the owner's corporation, the situation is otherwise and may involve not only the police but also state and federal human rights authorities.
Let's hope that you don't experience any of this, but if you do, again, make sure that you get good legal advice. That's all we've got time for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show because I love bringing it to you. I also love meeting our viewers in person. So if you're in Melbourne on the 29th to the 31st of August, drop by the Destiny stand at the Melbourne Homebuyer and Investor Show. Details and free tickets are on the Destiny website, destiny.com.au. Now while you're there, why not sign up for the free Destiny newsletter? I'm also on Facebook and Twitter, Margaret Lomas AU. I look forward to seeing you again next week when we'll be back with another packed show for property enthusiasts. Until then, goodbye and have a great week.
Property Success is proudly supported by Destiny, empowering property investors to achieve property success for almost 20 years.